and sometimes specifically, parang Quezon City, let's say Manila, Metro Manila. So may Manila as basta the big Manila and the small Manila. so that you don't get confused when the word Eden is mentioned. So verse 9 says, out of the ground the Lord God caused every tree that is pleasing to the sight and good for food, and the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. As mentioned, God created man mortal. And the thing there is, God did not leave it at that. He created man mortal, yet He provided a remedy to that. And the remedy He provided is what? The tree of life. Whenever they would get that tree of life, whenever they eat the fruit of the tree of life, their life is extended. That's why, if we go now to Genesis chapter 3, after they sinned, it says, 3:24, so He drove the man out, and at the east of the Garden of Eden He stationed the cherubim and the flaming sword, which turned every direction to guard the way to the tree of life. So, the punishment of Adam and Eve when they sinned was what? They were banished out of the garden, and therefore what? Had no more access to the tree of life. So yes, man is made mortal, but God provided a solution to that. It is the tree of life. And this is very common in that ancient time. In the epic of Gilgamesh, there was the god of the flood, and the god of the flood would have to go to the bottom of the cosmic river to get a plant that would rejuvenate him. So the tree of life is not a fruit wherein once you eat it, it will give you life forever. It is a tree wherein you need to eat it to sustain life. That's when Adam and Eve had no more access to that tree and was barred, and they were placed angels to guard over it, they died. There was another ancient story wherein it's called the Tale of Adapa. The gods were fighting, and one of the gods lost. When that god lost, nagsumbong sa greater god, and the greater god told this other god, I don't remember their names, to go to meet him and to explain. Then one of the gods said, guess what? Make sure you don't eat and drink anything that he gives, because the moment you eat and drink it, you will die, he said to this other god. So when the other god went to meet the big boss god, he was offered food and drinks, and he refused and went back. To find out what was given to him was the food of life. He was blackmailed. So that concept of the tree of life is very common in that thinking. It is a tree of youth rather than the tree of immortality. In today's context, parang stem cell research. Di ba mga people who does stem cell, they become younger. It's supposed to make you younger or maintain your present status. That is what the tree of life does. It does not give you immortality. It only prolongs your life. Now, the difficult in the story of the garden is not really the tree of life. The difficulty is explaining what is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And you can research on that, and chances are the number of books that you will read on it will give different theories on that. So what I'm sharing right now on the tree of the knowledge on good and evil is my best understanding of what it means and what it symbolizes. You know, this is one of the biggest grappling point for me in today's message. What is that tree of knowledge and good and evil that when you eat of it, you will die? And that when God said the man became like one of us who knows what good and evil is. This is my thesis, and I'm saying this is just my understanding of what it means. You can beg to differ here, but this is just my best effort in explaining what it is. When does one doesn't understand what good and evil is? When can we not understand it? He does not understand good and evil when one has not experienced evil. That was just my thinking. If one has not experienced evil, one really cannot differentiate between good and evil. One might have a concept of what evil is, but to get the full knowledge of what it is, he is devoid of. It's like saying, if I give you a glass of ice of water, and I tell you this is cold water, and you live, let's say, in Iceland, and you drink cold water, you understand what cold water is. And if I tell you, hot water, boiling hot water, is the exact opposite, but there is no actual hot water around. Then one day you give your child another cold water, but not as cold. You will have a glimpse of what hot water is by experience what is not as cold, but still have no full appreciation of what boiling water is all about. Right? Then you can get a room temperature water, and you say, anak, so that's almost like hot. Yes, I have this concept, but it's still not what hot water really is. Until you experience what hot water is, boiling hot, drinking it, burning your skin, then you will fully understand what hot water is. Before you experience hot water, it is just a concept that you understand, but your understanding of it is not full or fuller. Alright? And the point here is, I'll tell you the point. The point here is that God is telling man, with regard to the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, is to be dependent on Him. That is the point of the tree of the knowledge of fruit and the tree of good and evil. It is man showing to God that he is dependent on God. Go to Genesis chapter 24. Genesis chapter 24, verse 45. It says, "Before I had finished speaking in my heart, behold, Rebekah came out with her jar in her shoulder, and went down to the spring and drew, and I said to her, 'Please let me drink.' She quickly lowered her jar from her shoulder and said, 'Drink, and will water your camel also.' So I drank, and she watered the camel also. Then I asked her and said, whose daughter are you? And she said, the daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, from Milcah, born to him. And I put the ring on her nose and the bracelet on her wrist. And I bestowed low and worshiped the Lord. And blessed the Lord. And I bestowed low and worshiped the Lord, and blessed the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who had guided me in the right way to take the daughter of my master kinsman for his son. Verse 49. So now, if you're going to deal kindly and truly with my master, tell me. If not, let me know, that I may return to the right hand or to the left. Then Laban and Bethuel replied, the matter comes from the Lord, so we cannot speak to you, bad or good. It does not mean that Laban could not speak anything bad or good. What that means is that Laban chooses not to decide for himself. He has recognized that God has spoken through Abraham and the servant, and that the servant has chosen their daughter. And now Laban has no more choice but to trust in God's decision. He has relinquished his right to decide what is good and bad for the daughter because God has decided on it. Good and bad, good and evil. Go to 1 Kings, please. 1 Kings chapter 3. Verse 9 says, so give your servant an understanding heart to judge your people, to discern between good and evil. For who is able to judge great peoples of yours? So again, Solomon is asking what discernment. Discernment regarding what is good and evil. While Laban in turn was giving up and relying on God's decision and not his decision if to give his wife or not. Go to Isaiah 7, please. Isaiah 7 verse 15 to 16 says, he will eat curds and honey at the time he knows enough to refuse evil and choose good. For before the boy will know enough to refuse evil and choose good, the land whose two kings you dread will be forsaken. Here it shows that a young lad cannot decide, cannot discern what is good for him and what is bad for him. The lack of discernment. So the view that the knowledge of the tree, that the knowledge of good and evil basically indicates moral autonomy. And what God is saying to Adam is that, Adam, you are not to live autonomous to God. What is forbidden is for man to decide for himself. What the tree of the knowledge of good and evil shows that man is not in a position to decide for himself what is best for him. He has to give that to God. But whenever man decides for himself what is good for him, he becomes autonomous and becomes like God. When he says, God, you are not to discern for me what is good for me and what is bad for me, I will decide that. then man becomes autonomous and says, I don't